What's happening?
All right, not much. Excited for this episode. We've got a true logistics veteran here, 30 years, all sorts of different companies. Very impressive resume. So I'm looking forward to diving into this one.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. You gonna get some lighting for one of these shows, by the way? I can barely see you.
Man, I've got my blinds. It's just a reflection. I have to get something set up, create a little
Oh, that's much better. I don't know what
screen
you
desk or
just did,
something.
but
Yeah, probably
um,
blocking the light or something.
yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. Before we get into it, I think our first question we got to ask them today is: Are you a single space or a double space?
Yeah, seems to be all the craze this afternoon on the LinkedIn.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll dive into it. Before we get started, special shout out to our sponsor, Sales CRM. If you guys are in the market for a CRM brokers, give Josh Lyles a shout. Tell him the dog sent you. Great software at reasonable pricing.
yeah,
And
it's
also,
really
go ahead.
yeah. I mean, it's like half of the other CRM costs. So, and he's a really cool guy. Used to be a freight broker, knows the industry. Highly recommend.
He's also got some good content, so you guys should check out his page and connect with him if you're not. Well, let's get into it. I'm gonna add Mark Kapostasy to the stage, and we'll get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, good afternoon, Will and Matt. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Right, doing all right. Fun, fun-filled day of making sure our vendors get paid and making sure our freight moves. So that's always the day in logistics. You got to keep your customers happy, internal and external.
Yeah, no kidding.
100%. Where are you located? Are you down south, north?
Well, I'm in Mayfield. I'm in Mayfield Village in Cleveland, which is just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, at the corporate office. Our main plants are in Albemarle, North Carolina, and Rogers, Arkansas, and we got about 25 plants around the world that we interact with on a regular basis.
Wow.
Very cool. Keeps you busy.
Yep.
So as
I mean,
far
I
as
guess.
I was going to
Go
say,
ahead,
so
Will.
as far as the transportation that you're overseeing, is it mostly over the road trucks?
We do an assortment of everything. The products that we make are for the utility industry, so our customers are uh, the utility companies, but we sell through a distributorship model. So anywhere where there's power, people need our product because it keeps the wires hanging in the air, and it really helps make sure that the power lines work when we have bad weather, and to make sure they stay up. So we started in 1947, and there's still product in the field that was installed in 1947. We pride ourselves in making the best products in our industry, listening to our customers, and designing products to make sure we meet our customers' specifications. And so when there's a storm, we need to make sure that we get our products out to the field so your power can get back on as fast as possible.
There's been a lot of storms already this season. I was just seeing in Iowa some major tornadoes, and it's been a fun spring so far.
Yeah, tornadoes aren't as bad as the hurricanes because the hurricanes hit and they knock out power for millions of people at a time. So when we start, and we'll start tracking storms really shortly to see what's going on in the Atlantic, and then we will build production based upon their estimates, and we have a pretty good track record of knowing what's going to get hit, where it's going to get hit, and what we have in the field out there to help make sure that we get that product out into the field.
Very cool. Well, we kind of ask everyone who comes on, how did you you have a long. If anyone saw Mark's bio, he's got a long history in logistics, a lot of different roles. You want to kind of tell us about how you got into logistics and kind of some of the things you've been doing, because you've got to see a lot of sides of logistics from your bio.
Yeah. Well, how I got into it is my wife lived in Cincinnati, and she said, "Well, if you want to marry me, you got to move down there." So I said, "Okay."
Can't say
I'm
no.
smart. I'm smart like that. We've been married for 32 years, and I've been with her for 37. So she's been a good partner in my life. And but anyway, she was working for a company called OPW, and they make the gas station handles. Every time you pump gas, you'll look at it. About 80% of them will say OPW 11A, and that is the standard gas station handle made. For most of your gas stations, they're spec'd in BP and in Shell and a lot of that. You'll see some other competitors now, but they were the lion's share of it. And so I went to a Christmas party, and I met her freight forwarder, and her freight forwarder asked me what I did, and I was selling insurance. He said, well, if you've been able to eat for 2 years selling insurance, you probably can sell freight forwarding. Why don't you talk to me after the new year? I said, okay. And then on March 8th March 8th, 1993, I started in the world of freight forwarding at Expeditors International, and I've loved freight ever since.
Yeah, so two things I want to hit on. One, with the gas station handles, I get a lot of messages like, "How do you source leads?" It's like, man, just look around. Everything that you see has been put on a truck, train, or a boat at one point or another. So something as just gas station handles. Never think about it. And then two, insurance sales. We hire a bunch of people that have experience selling life insurance or some kind of insurance. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah, so you got started with the forwarding, and it seems like you did that for quite a while. And so you started TQL's Global Forwarding.
Well, yeah. So what I did is I was a local sales rep, and so for my first 5 years, I just tried to figure out what we did. And I was lucky. I got to go to work back with a guy I worked with at Expeditors, and I worked at Kuhn & Nagel for 2 years. But in the freight forwarding industry, they like to do this thing called capping commissions. Well, if you're 27, 28 years old with a baby on the way, you really don't want to have your commissions capped. That's not a good plan. So I remembered that there was a company called Phoenix International, who's based out of Chicago, and hearing people talk about they're always out in the field selling. And so I said, hey, Ken, why don't we open an office in Cincinnati for them? And so we went and we opened an office, and in about 8 years, we grew it to 25, 26 people. We're contributing about $1 million of GP after corporate contribution to the company. And, so I had a really good run there. And then I was lucky enough to go to Australia, and I covered Australia and New Zealand. And then unfortunately, the currency crisis hit Australia. It went from $1.06, $1.07 down to about 67 cents in about 2.5 years. And when you're the trade lane manager in a country that's import dependent, and the currency falls from $1.07 to 67 cents, you're in a lot of trouble because they can only buy about 60%. So you're going to lose 40% of your sales base just for existing, because they don't have the money to pay for it. So I got knocked around a little bit and went to work for Geodis, and I met these guys over at TQL, and they were looking to get into international, and they really didn't know what to do. And I said, well, here, let's start this out. And so we got them a customs broker's license, and they hired a customs broker, and they needed a FMC license, so we got them set up with an FMC license. And basically, I walked them through the basic processes of how you move an international shipment. The challenge that they found is that their sales model was a buy-sell model, and that's what mostly truck brokerage is a buy-sell model. International freight forwarding is really a lot more complex in regards to how it's built, because there's so many different transactions. If you look at an international transaction from door to door, from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the US or vice versa, there's 5 steps. There's the pre-carriage, there's the export customs, there's the main carriage, then there's the import customs brokerage, and then there's the on carriage. And so it's a 5-step process, and it's not really a buy-sell as much as a build solution to meet a customer's need. And so I got them up and running. And, at the time after I was done, I said, I need to go back to do my freight forwarding work. And so I left there and I went over to Agility to be a branch manager. And well, I was loving that. I was killing it. But DSV liked us so much, they decided to buy us. And so all of a sudden, after going through some currency changes and going through, being purchased, and then going through some, other downturns in the industry, I said, let me go to work for a shipper. I bet there's a shipper out there that could use my skills. And I, found the right job at the right place at the right time. And it's been a great experience. And it's really helped me be a better logistician, just because I get to see so much more of how the inside of a company works. And, to Matt's earlier comments about, how, talking to a shipper really will make you a better salesperson. It's because you get to understand all the different dynamics that come into a company. And I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but the guys at TQL, they exposed me to was they have a very interesting sales model, and I won't talk about that because it's not how I grew up in the industry. We trained a lot more on product and product development. They work more on a sales development side of, dialing for dollars. But what I learned at TQL, and people say, there's some negative out there, but they have some tremendous product people. Their LTL guy is a tremendous guy, Teddy Biros, and they had the people in oversized. They were excellent. And so they had some really good people there, but it exposed me to how full truckload worked. It exposed me to more of LTL. I've always been engaged in LTL because it's a core component of freight forwarding, but I really got to see it from the brokerage side. Then I got to see it from an operations side. And then, the things like hazmat, they had good hazmat people with good hazmat teams. And so they had some really good things that really helped me. And I helped them in a big way in drayage and getting them to get around their head around what a freight forwarder is looking for in drayage, in the brokerage of drayage, and why there's so many disconnects between brokers, draymen, and freight forwarders. And they were really able to put some things together. A guy named Josh Kostraba, really nice guy. He was really able to take the things. I started learning about TWIC cards and insurance and how you work in and out of a port on the drayage side from them. And then they told me how they procured drayage from people who weren't your container port groups and other local drayage people, guys who just have a power unit are going to go pick up a chassis, pick up a container and move it on. So we had a really good relationship in there that I was able to bring them knowledge about things that they didn't know about. And I got to round out some of the rough edges in my transportation knowledge. So that's how my relationship with TQL was. I think they're a very good company. I think because they grow so fast and they work so hard at growing, they get soft in regards to making sure there are people out there doing things the right way because they just hire so many people.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that more? Like like to ask most, shippers who come on and ones I ask, what percentage of your, would you think your emails you get or LinkedIn DMs are, kind of the spray and pray, 4 paragraphs about their services, or, what percent of them do you think are actually, pointed towards what you do and, more personalized?
I would say 98% of the emails that I get and contacts I get are absolutely hopeless. Because like you said, they're spray and pray. The big one is I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio. We do 150 shipments a year in and out of Cleveland, which is absolutely nothing compared to what our factories do. They're usually samples for engineering, things we're bringing in because, we want to look at it and figure it out. I've got that all handled. All my LTL carriers can do all of that. And so they asked me, well, I got trucks in the area. Fantastic. We don't do truckloads out of Cleveland because it's a research and development lab. So what good is it to tell me, oh, we've got trucks there, or we've got trucks anywhere? Have you looked at where my plants are? No. Okay. See you later. So that the big thing is when you're going to call, and look, I get that there's pressure to make your numbers, but if you're going to call a large corporation, and we're not even large, we're a mid-size, we're $700 million in sales. We do about 350 million of that in the United States. But we're a big company you better know what you're talking about because we've been in business for 77 years. I came in to fix some things specifically regarding international because that's what I do. But our LTL product, when I came in, was pretty robust. It's pretty stout. We work with a TMS called FreightView, which is owned by C.H. Robinson, but not affiliated. And we have a large number of contracts direct with the carriers. And we're our own freight forwarder in that regard. We know our classifications. We know how to pay bills. So we do that very, very well. So when you come and talk to me about LTL, I'm like, well, how are you going to beat? I've got 14 direct carrier contracts and we quote every shipment and we let the parochial knowledge of our people make decisions based upon what's best for our customers. How are you going to make that better than ours?
Yeah, that's a great point. So Matt spoke to a guy maybe a couple weeks ago, a high producer, but his commission wasn't paid out unless he reached a certain number of calls. So you see a lot of that sort of stuff in the industry, which is kind of, like pushes that kind of thing, just dialing without any research or prior knowledge. So especially if you speak to somebody like you with 30 years of experience, so you're going to be able to tell pretty early on that they don't know what they're talking about or that they're not prepared. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. So anybody listening, it definitely pays dividends to do your research and be prepared before you make a call rather than just dialing blindly.
Are you, Mark, are you seeing more LinkedIn messages, more phone calls, more emails? Or another thing we always like to ask is, kind of what's your preferred method and kind of where do you see most of the, outreach going?
So I get phone calls to my cell phone. I get phone calls to my office phone. I get LinkedIn messages, and I get a lot of emails. The best way to reach me is with a well-crafted email that tells me what you do, because I know what we're looking for. I mean, I have, in 2.5 years, I understand, because we run our logistics, I know all of our vendors that we pay the freight on. I know all of our customers we pay the freight on. And so I have an understanding of what our internal needs are. And because of my experience, I try to match our internal needs with the carriers that we're going to select. And I think that the single most important thing that people have to understand is I have multiple needs. It's not just outbound LTL or outbound full truckload. I have different types of needs along that. And a lot of it is inbound. And I'm always curious as to why people talk to me about my outbound when I've got a lot more dollars spent on my inbound. In regards to, in the overall, because I have lots of ocean freight, I have air freight, I have courier, I have full truckload, I have LTL, but everyone wants to talk to me. Excuse me, let me turn that off. I have a lot of, other things that really have high service requirements that would be much better to talk about than just, hey, can I quote you? And the funny thing is, I don't quote any of our truck freight for outbound because we put it into our TMS with a select few brokers, and the people at our plants are the ones who route it. I vet all of our brokers, and I work with our teams to make sure the brokers are doing what we need, but I don't have to work with the brokers day in, day out. The people at the plants do. So we have a very unique situation as I talk to our plants at least once a month to check to say, is everybody doing good? Are you happy? And we let them go through it. And we have a pretty good idea of what a truck price looks like based in the current market, because we're going to get 3 or 4 quotes on every job on a full truckload, and it keeps it in balance. And then unless you really screw up right now, we're not going to switch, because these people, that we got to make sure that we're partners, because there's going to come a time when this market switches. And our brokers that we're working with now, we expect to be at the top of their plate because we fed them when they were slow, and they're going to take care of us when the business gets busy. And if they don't, we'll have our Johnny on the spot. We'll have 4 or 5 guys that are sitting there waiting to say, if somebody doesn't service us properly, we'll switch them out. And that's what these people, the young brokers, have to understand is that I'm getting hit 3,000 times a year. I'm looking at 1, maybe 2 new brokers in a 12-month period, if at all. And so you better come to me with something that you're offering that's unique, something that's different, something that fits what we need. Otherwise, you're swinging in the wind. It's not gonna do anything for you.
Did you see that with COVID? When the market switched, did you see that a lot of brokers stayed with you and honored their relationship, or a lot just bail when the rates were through the roof the last market switch?
I came in January of 2022, and what I found was the market went up, and what I found was not all the brokers wanted to come down when the market came down. Well, I'm a professional freight buyer, and if the market comes down, I'm going to figure it out. Now, you might get away with it for 4 to 6 weeks, but I'm going to catch you. And we caught some people, and the people that played with us up and played with us down, they're still with us today. The people who we caught with their hands in the cookie jar, they're no longer with us, because you got to make your money and you got to cover your costs. But the concept of making a rip or having a grand shipment, meaning you make $1,000. Well, that's nice. Occasionally you get one of those. You do it too much, we're going to figure it out. And then you're going to lose a relationship because, I have a really big expression to all my carriers. Everyone should have a steak on Saturday, but no one should eat lobster on Monday.
I like that saying. I like
it. And so, our careers are upper middle class, so we should have the things that upper middle class people do. We're professionals in this. This is what we, this is where we live, and we should live like that. But we shouldn't steal from people. That's kind of in. And when you try to make $1,500 on a truckload that I'm running on the inbound every week, and I just haven't caught you yet, when I catch you, how do you justify it when it's been 6 or 7 weeks?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's not super sustainable. It's very short-sighted. You might get, 4 or 5 rippers, but in the long term, if you're able to just keep that relationship going, I mean, that's over time you'll make more than that than taking advantage of the situation short term.
Well, and you're gonna and you're never and you got to try to win a new customer to replace it. That's the hard part. Is the reason you want to take care of your customers is they're so damn hard to replace. There's a really good book. It was written about 25 years ago. How to Win Customers and Keep Them for Life, and it talked about Nordstrom's true commitment to satisfying their customer, and it really highlighted. You got to have an intimate relationship with your partners, and you got to do what they want. And then you've got to fire your bad customers. That is another big part of it. Is if someone keeps abusing you, you got to get rid of them. So somebody keeps squeezing you down to where you can't make any money, you got to walk away. But really what most people want is consistent service and work through the issues at a reasonable margin. And I think that's one of the things that people have to understand is, we're really looking to run our businesses, and that's what everything that I do is first based upon how is this going to impact my business? Is it going to help me sell more? Is it going to help me maintain my costs? Is it going to interrupt my business because I'm taking a risk to save $300 on a truckload of $300,000 worth of material? Well, that'd be absolutely asinine. And, that's one of the things that everybody has to realize is that my main job is to make sure my business runs. We run, we're Brenda Smith, my counterpart, and I, we're responsible for about 27,000 shipments a year between all modes and there. Our job is to make sure our plants run and our customers run. That's what our primary job is. Then it's to keep control of costs. And we have, the big thing is we have so many different customers internally based upon what the use of the product is. Sometimes it's a finished product. It's going direct into inventory. Sometimes it's a raw material. Sometimes it's a piece of equipment. Those are the things that I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to serve my internal customers and our external customers, but our external customers are distributorships. They order every week. We ship every week. They get their stuff. So, people ask me, well, we've got the best tracking system for LTL. Fantastic. I haven't tracked 2 shipments of LTL to a customer since I've been here. So fantastic. Great. That's wonderful. We've got a whole team of people that if something doesn't go on, they'll track that freight and they have all our logins and all our contacts. But that isn't a concern of mine because I'm there to make sure that process works more than not. So those are the things, the other things we work on is monitoring our claims, understanding, we have a very low claim rate for LTL. It's 0.18%. We are tremendous at it. We build crates and products to do it. And a lot of my time is spent talking with customer service to say, look, in freight, the average is 1.25%. That's what the average industry is for LTL damage in transit. We're at 0.18%. So is it systemic or is it isolated? In almost all of our cases, it's isolated. A trucker hit a pothole and it went up to the ceiling and it came down and it smashed. That's going to happen if you do enough shipments. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to serve people internally, and buying freight is just one component. But what we're really doing is serving our customers. So if you come at me just at a rate standpoint, I could care less because rate isn't the only consideration. It's making sure that our distributors get their product when they need it, making sure we set up delivery appointments when we need it, and more importantly, is we're doing a lot of transactions on a daily basis. You need to show up on time. That is the most important thing. I can't have 48 skids sitting on my dock blocking the rest of my dock that keeps all my other shipments there. So people don't think about that. I got to clean my dock every night because they're going to start picking overnight and they're going to have that set up for the next day. If I have 48 skids, that means there's 48 skids I can't have my team pick. And so that's what we're worried about is we're worried about keeping the beast running.
Are you, what kind of focus do you have on, a lot has been talked lately about technology, EDI, API. I think CH Robinson launched an AI chat or AI answering emails for quotes. I know a lot of brokers are selling tech, and you hear mixed opinions on that. What's kind of your thought process on, kind of all the tech that's being sold and what kind of tech, you need as a shipper?
Well, here's the thing that the technology that I need, because my customers aren't hounding me. My customers aren't Amazon customers, right? Where they want to see where their freight is every minute of the day. They really don't. They want exception management. So technology in that regard is really only important to the point where if something doesn't deliver within its expected transit, how do we use technology to resolve the conflict? In regards to pricing, it's absolutely awful for our business model to use those models for AI because they talk about the past. We are an hour and 15 minutes outside of Charlotte in Albemarle. And then when you look at our other plant, we're in Rogers, Arkansas. So when you look at that, and because we distribute to such a large span in the United States to supplement our LTL, we have no idea where our truckloads are going to go. And nobody can tell me right now what an honest price is from Rogers, Arkansas today to Yakima, Washington, based upon last month's number. It isn't. The frequency of trucks, the need for trucks in there. Going to Florida, sometimes people want to get things down there, sometimes they don't. And it's usually forward thinking. So we really need people, and this is why we like the human interaction. We like them to be able to look at their systems, to look at prior year information, and to look at the current overall rate market. But when you got to find a truck, you got to find a truck because I need it off my dock. And on the last Friday of a month, of the last Friday of a quarter, it's harder to find a truck. And so if you're looking, in June, let me look at the calendar here. June 28th is going to be a crisis day in freight. You're going into the 4th of July weekend. It's the end of the quarter. It's the end of the month, and you're going to need freight. And so you're going to look at a price from the 30 days prior, sometime like right now, and try to give me a rate based upon what happened 30 days ago when I'm going to be up against the end of the month, the end of the quarter before a holiday weekend, and we're closed on the 4th and the 5th. And you're going to tell me that your AI is going to be smart enough to figure out what my truck price is from Albemarle, North Carolina to Reno, Nevada, or somewhere outside of there. Your AI is not going to work. So to me, AI is going to be great in the major markets and in the major lanes. In regards to the small stuff, it'll never work because you just don't know. Because sometimes Johnny's got a truck 15 minutes away, and well, you're going to get a good rate because Johnny's got a truck 15 minutes away and he's available and he wants to move it. But there will be times where you might have to, drive for 3 hours to come pick up my load, and that's going to dictate my price. So I think that AI will give large brokers guidelines, but I think you're always going to need the human nature, especially in the highly variable shipping markets. So if I were a broker, I would either want to run one of those networks that's all dependent upon AI, or I'd want to get away from that as fast as I can because that will drive the market down to the bottom. But at the end of the day, that isn't going to get a truck if you don't have a truck. So you're going to need people who can get trucks for you. And so our strategy is, let's make sure we have trucks.
Are a lot of your shipments, pretty long lead times or more on the shorter lead times?
Well, it's a little bit all over the shop. I mean, we have, we're in the utility industry, and when we do some of our projects, our lead times are 3 to 5 years from when the project starts to when our product has to ship, because it's a 700-mile run, and the design time, they have to get the design done, and then they've got to put all the other people in the process. And then we have our regular distributor shipments that are regular on a weekly basis. They call us up and say, hey, we shipped this much this week. Will you give us our replenishment stock? And it's there in 7 days. Most of our truckload, though, is more planned out and projected. But when we have all the parts, because we don't know when we're going to run, or we don't have all the raw materials, and we've got 7 or 8 different parts on it, and we're waiting for things from China, and we're waiting on things from Brazil, and we're waiting on things from the Czech Republic to meet it so that we can load a truck and then ship it out. And, we're waiting on things. Those are things that happen in the real world when you're doing projects where you're like, yeah, we'd like to think we have a general idea of when it's going to ship, but the actual day, no.
It's interesting. I agree with a lot of what you said. It's interesting. What scares me is sometimes you might not know, like as a shipper, if someone is using AI pricing right now, on your TMS. Some of these systems are so hard to tell who's using it and who's not. And
Yeah.
as it gets better, it's going to be interesting. I'm with you though. Some of these remote areas, I don't know how technology is going to do that, but
Yeah, we tried it, and we tried it, and someone sold us, and it didn't work, and it was one of the 20 big brokers. I won't use any names here because I don't think but we've had a couple of people try it, and we've all went back to the same thing: is you can't quote that way because it's not the reality of the market today. And so in our position is 3 strikes and you're out. We tell you up front, quote based upon making sure you're going to get us loaded. It's not the $100 we're worth. We're not worried about $100 difference on it. We'd rather make sure you get the right carrier under it, get into our dock, because over the course of the year, $100 on our number of loads isn't that much when you're looking at $350 million in sales. What matters is, and if you lose a utility customer and they stop speccing you might never get back in. So we want to keep our specs. When we're specced into a utility customer, and our distributors like using our product and keeping the ball rolling, we want to keep doing that. We want to keep the ball moving.
that's another topic. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, obviously, your customers come first, and if a shipment is missed or late, it could be a disaster and cost you a customer. What are kind of your expectations, with brokers, with communication? I'm sure that's probably one of the easiest ways for you to fire a broker is, have an issue and not know about it, or find out from one of your customers calling you. You want to maybe, touch on that and, some things you've seen, or kind of your expectations with that.
So the people who, so when we have a problem with a broker, it's usually because they fail to communicate, and they fail to get truckers and come up with reasonable resolution to the problem. We know it's going to happen. Life's going to happen. There's going to be truckers who do get flat tires. There's going to be trucks that turn upside down. It's how you react to those. And that's really important, is being able to communicate. And it's not with me. I don't book the loads. Our plants book the loads. They work with them. So I expect my brokers to have good relationships with the people at the desk level in our plants. And, it's okay to have back and forth conversation with those people, because they're the ones who know, hey, that quote we talked about last week, it's not going to load Wednesday. It's looking like Thursday or Friday. Can we set that booking up right now for Friday in advance? I want you to have that relationship with our docs, because they're the ones who know the truth. They're in the plant. And so they know, because somebody comes in the morning is screaming, that, hey, that stuff from Taiwan didn't show up. Okay, well, that truckload can't leave without that product, because it's a core product that's in the shipment. So they know right away. So really, it's important to have lots of relationships with the customer in all the way through the process. And most of our brokers have figured out how important it is to have a relationship with me a little bit, with our shipping supervisor, but more importantly, the shipping technicians, and then our expediters, because they get involved with it, and then we have some customer service people that are there for things that go out of whack. Maybe a customer placed an order for a shipment to arrive on June 15th, but it didn't get into the system. And then there's a truckload that left on May 15th, and the consignee is not going to be there to receive it. How do you resolve that quickly? We're a big time company, or we're a big company. We're big boys. We'll accept the fact that there's problems that happen, but how do you address it? So those are the communications that we want from our brokers, because everybody's got to make a dollar. I mean, the thing that young brokers have to understand is we all have to make a profit, or our businesses won't be here. So we're not looking for people to work for free. What we're looking for people is to take out as many defects as they can and do it at a fair margin, so that the broker can make a living and that the broker's company can survive and continue to provide service and have the technology and the billing systems. And a big thing is, do you know how to bill properly? That'll get you fired from us as well. Don't bill on time. We have a broker who does a wonderful job on a northbound lane for us, and all of a sudden the billing person started sending me the invoices instead of to our payment service. So I had 90 days of invoices. I don't look at the invoices. We pay a lot of invoices every month. So I just assumed they added me onto it. So then at 90 days, they start calling me, telling me, hey, you're not paying. I said, where have you been sending the invoices? I said, our profile states exactly where our invoices go. Bill to our profile. And then they're complaining about wanting money now. I said, you didn't send it to the right place. We're going to put it right through our process, and you're going to get it according to our terms from the time that it was received at our billing service. And that's the way it's going to be. Or we're going to find somebody else to move that freight, because you changed your process. I didn't change mine.
Did they accept that, or did they go somewhere else?
Yeah. And it's get it, and that's one of the benefits I have is that when you call my bluff, you better make sure you have your guns locked and loaded, because I've been doing this for a while. For every lane that we have, I have a backup carrier right now waiting in case something bad goes on. There's very few things where I'm not double covered and have a relationship where I can't get it set up. And that's what our job is to have a strong offense, but we have to have defense. And so we have to have people that we can replace, because things happen. I mean, we worked with Yellow. Yellow went bankrupt, and we had to have people who could immediately take over for that situation. And so you got to keep good relationships with people, and that's why, just because today I don't need you doesn't mean I won't need you in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I won't jack you around. I'm going to tell you exactly where you are in my pecking order, but we have to have those relationships. As a sales preview, I mean, there's Rose Jones was 13 years I called on that woman. 13 years, and I finally got my chance because her customs broker screwed up. They got a new person. They didn't want to do the deliveries the way she wanted. She goes, Mark, you've been calling me every 6 months for 13 years. Now's your chance. That's a long time to call somebody.
Yeah.
That's a long time to call somebody. And I was always polite. I knew I understood, but I was really good out of Asia. My background is the Far East of the United States. And so, I just kept hounding. And, that was a nice account. They only did 150 shipments a year, but they let me make money, and they demanded service, and we gave it to them. And that was, that was a nice win, and so, these young guys want to jump in, and, it's kind of like dating. You go out and you meet somebody, and you try to find out if you'd like to work with them or you'd like to date them. You don't walk up to them and say, let's jump in. And a lot of these brokers think that that's how this works. And it's unfortunate during COVID, there were so many people, if you gave them an answer that I can get you a truck, they just said, let's get it on. Well, that isn't how it is. Everybody can get a truck right now. And so we've got the young brokers have to understand the shippers are back. We have a lot more balance. We have a lot more that we can work with. going forward. We really can take the time to do things right. Our hair is not nearly as on fire as it was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, I walked into my company and ocean freight rates were up to $25,000 a container. Now, I was lucky in that my history, I knew a lot of people in the ocean freight business, and I could sort that stuff out really, really quickly. But those were the things we were up against. And that was, going back to the full truckload, my fire was $25,000 ocean freight quotes, not $3,000 truck quotes that should be $2,200, right? So we all have our time. So you gotta find when the timing, and timing plays into fortune and luck. And so I think for the young sales guys that are out there listening, you got to understand, you got to find people that you want to work with, that you think you might do a good job. And then you got to stay in line, and you just got to keep working there. I would say, go ahead.
Do you have anyone right now who's been reaching out to you since 2022? Any of those brokers kind of like Rose are, going on 3 years now?
No, I've had a couple of people, but they're getting a little bit overzealous in regards to that. But I had a young lady who called on me for about 15 months, and in 15 months she got in because she said, "Hey, I drove by your plant. I saw you're putting on an addition." Said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "I can't talk to you right now, but how about you give me a call in 2 months?" Then we just kept going on and had a little bit of a talk, and had her do a few things for me that didn't come to fruition. But then I had her talk to the people at the plant, and so I'm always going to ask the people at the plant their input for someone. And when a really big company fell out, she was there. And now she's in our quoting system, and she's doing the work, and she's getting loads, and she's making her commissions, and she's happy about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. What I tell my people is in this market, the people that are quick to give you a shot, it's probably not going to be a good customer. The customers you want are in the follow-ups, kind of what you're talking about. But any shipping manager that gives anybody that calls them a shot, it's not really somebody that you're probably going to build a long-lasting relationship with. It's kind of undercutting everything I said. Yeah, that I think everybody just wants everything immediate these days. The young sales reps, one call, DoorDash, everything's just immediate, right? So that's great to hear, especially, man, 13 years. What a story. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I haven't heard that long. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, I've heard some that are 2-3 years, nothing over a decade. That's crazy.
Well, when you're in the I was in the inbound from Asia business. So you have, I really focused on Hong Kong, Taiwan, and mainland China. But if you focused on Hong Kong and Taiwan, the China was going to come. And this is back in the, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And so, I started calling on her in 94, and I think I got my shot in 2006 or 2007.
That's awesome.
Just because, and the other thing is, know what you're good at. When you tell me you're good at everything, you're probably not good at anything. It took a long time for me to learn other things, and I think that's where people start saying, well, I know everything. I don't know everything, and I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I learn things every day. I was not a very good courier guy. That's not something that an international freight forwarder, we send envelopes. So over the last 2.5 years, I've talked to some people, and we've gotten some things in, that we can work with. I work with a company called TransImpact, their software, to help me read my bills so that I know what's going on. And they do a wonderful job of telling me what I'm doing wrong. And then I can go and work with the people in my company to make sure that we're fixing those things, make sure we're paying on time, all that, and taking out those unnecessary costs. So, but I didn't know anything about courier business. Why would you know anything about courier? You can't make any, as a freight sales guy, it's hard to know about that because it's not something that you do every day. It's an $8 transaction or a $32 transaction. I'm an international forwarder. My starting is $1,000 on anything, and my preference is $6,000 or $7,000 on an ocean freight, and on an air freight it might be $30,000 or $40,000. So a $42 box didn't mean much to me until you see how many there are, and then you go, oh, we better fix that and fix that and fix that. And you go, oh, that's how they make their money. they make your money by your mistakes. They don't make it by your straightforward stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's so important for people getting started out to find one mode of transportation, kind of a niche, and get started there. It's much easier to build a book around something that you do become an expert on, rather than jumping from one mode to another and kind of having a hand in every pot and jumping around all over the place. So yeah, that's some great advice for anybody out there listening, trying to build a book.
Yep.
How do you think your experience, being a broker, being on the forwarding side, has that made it easier for you to kind of, I tried the shipper side for 3 months. It wasn't for me. I got to learn about international and some other things that were fun, but it was interesting because I had a broker tell me something that I knew wasn't true just from being a broker previously, and some people say previous brokers can be some of the best shippers or some of the hardest shippers, because obviously you're not going to believe certain things that maybe somebody that didn't have a background on the other side. So is that experience, kind of having a background on multiple sides, kind of helped you?
Oh, most definitely. But I'm in a unique situation is that I've got all kinds of different challenges. I mean, we have 75 international vendors. We've got 500 some domestic vendors. We've got several thousand domestic customers. So I've got people inside pinging me, asking me questions all day. So for me, it was great because most of my have been dealing with internal customers. Hey, how do we do this to help us sell more of this? How do we do this to get this here to make sure things are made? So those are the things that, so for me, I've really enjoyed being on the shipper side because I basically get to be a freight forwarder and without making cold calls. And so that's, as you get older, you get tired of talking to people who don't know what they're talking about. And so you stop. The drive to make those phone calls just isn't there. And so for the last 15 years of my career before that, I had other people bring me in. So I was a subject matter expert on shipping. So I didn't have to do the phone calls. But for 15 years, I was looking the other night, we had to go and make outside calls. You had to make 15 a week every week. One year, I think I made 937 sales calls. And that's dial it, get in, go out, visit. And so, you're going to build those relationships. And that's really, so it was time for me to move back and, to move to the shipper side of things. It's really made me a better it's made me a better logistician working on the shipper side.
Yeah, Matt was a shipper for 3 months and didn't even let me quote a single load. It's crazy, But no, that's definitely interesting. It really is interesting, and to look at your experience and kind of how it's all come to fruition in your current position, how it all kind of builds on top of itself. That's the cool thing about freight, in my opinion. Like everything you do, kind of the knowledge just builds on it. So it's really cool to watch your progression, all your experience, and just hear you talk about it.
I know we've touched on relationships a couple times too. Have you met a lot of your brokers, LTL carriers in person?
All of my LTL carriers, I've met them. So we just got back from Rogers, Arkansas, and we visited 3 of the terminals out there. We went to Albemarle, and we went to Charlotte, and we met the terminals. And I've got a person who has 31. The person I work with has a long career in PLP. They don't have a long career in freight. So I've been taking them out, showing them what the world looks like. So all of our international freight forwarders, with the exception of one I've met, but I've known him for a while. And he was actually recommended to me from one of our overseas vendors to work with their company. And so I try to ask for input from all of my partners. As for my large lanes, I really want to say, hey, who do you guys like to work with, and how can we build the relationship between the shipper, the origin station, destination, and our plants, and us, because we take care of the admin stuff. So we try to build a complete circle around all the people that are involved in it. And I think it's important to know your terminal managers of the people that you're big shippers with. It's important to have relationships with your salespeople. Going for lunch and getting a $12 salad is a great use of time for someone in logistics, because you sit there, you have a diet. I drink iced tea and I have a cod salad, and We sit and we talk about the things that I'm trying to achieve. They talk about the things they're trying to achieve, and then see if we can put together things and we can fix things. So I think it's really important for shippers to meet the people that they're working with. It's almost impossible not to on the international side, because you're going to get into some delicate situations, because you're dealing with duties, you're dealing with storage charges, you're dealing with examinations at the port. I walked in and we had a marking notice from the Port of Savannah regarding skids not being properly heat treated stamped, that most of them were, but some of them weren't fully heat treated. And so I had to work with the people. You need to have a relationship with the people so you can trust them to know that they're telling you the truth and help you work through those sticky situations. So I think it's important to know the people that you work with.
Yeah, I love to hear that. I think it's, we were touching on that earlier. I mean, I think the relationship part and the human part's going to have to be there for that reason. Our audience might not care so much about this question, but I think it's kind of interesting. Did you notice, because I had no experience, I was a truckload broker. So, and the shipper I was on, we had our own direct steamship rates. So we did a lot. We were a big exporter. And it was interesting to me, some of the process and the technology on the international side, I thought was much behind the times on the truckload side. I mean, we had our own direct contract rates, but if we wanted a spot quote, it would sometimes take, 2 days. And different, shipping lines, there was like, $30,000-$40,000 of invoices that had to be like disputed for all these different charges and like the audits of invoices. I didn't do that, but our accounting, it was really fascinating to me how different the international side was to the truckload side. I don't know if you see that too.
Well, and here, let me try to explain that from a spot standpoint. Steamship lines want contractual relationships where they have a contract where you tell them, this is what we did last year. We're going to do 20 up, 20 down, and this is what we're going to sign for. And they'll spend all the time doing all the rates, and they'll create the contract. But then you go off contract and you need a spot. Their business model isn't created to handle those transactional situations. So that's why they normally give blanket rates, or they give a contract to an NVO to handle those spot shipments. So let's say that you're shipping LA to Shanghai, 600 containers a year of, let's say anything. Strong ties. There's Samson Strong Ties ships a bunch of stuff over to China. They're industrial ties for things. But then all of a sudden you say, well, we got a customer we want to start in Vietnam. What's a container rate? Well, the guy who's going to Shanghai might be going, customer service. Who do I talk to? How do I get pricing for this account? I can't quote this because it's handled by our national guy, or it's our pricing team, and it takes 2 days to get through there. The people at the steamship lines are like, it's one container. I don't really give a damn about it. And so you're better off quoting through a freight broker, a customs broker, a freight forwarder, and doing it that way. And that's fit for purpose. And I think that's really important in shipping to understand, are you fit for purpose? Are you really doing what's right for your customer? And in those cases, as a shipper, you should go, yeah, you know what? I got this great system with Hyundai. I've got my contract, but they're not in that lane. And really, I'll give it to my buddy over at my freight forwarder and see if he can just do it as an NVO move, because for the extra $300 that he gets to make, it'll make sure that it gets done right, and I can put it to bed and I can go worry about the other fights of the day. So that is, yes, technology-wise for quoting is much more complex. Also, the contracts change on a more regular basis, and you're dealing with really big documents. The first contracts I started looking at in 1993 were 40 pages long, and you had to know how each of the components got put together to build a rate. None of that's changed. It's an electronic format, but you don't have nearly the access to the pricing, and the customer service people just aren't that good. Because what they want their customer service people do is reviewing bills of lading and making sure bookings are made. They're not really there to do quoting. Contrary to what they say, they're really not there to do that. They're there to service their large customers, which is why 40% of the ocean freight in the world moves via NVOs. I mean, there's a reason that happens. And so a lot of shippers need to need to be able to say, as much as I'd like to use one source, I can't.
That was pretty time consuming too. I had to enter in the rates when we got our ocean rates from our direct contracts into one Excel sheet, and then sort them by name, where they were going, and because there's not like a one universal system. So it's just surprising to me, because obviously a truckload you can get a quote back in 15 minutes. It's like, maybe it was just the agriculture. I was at an agriculture shipper in that whole industry, maybe as a whole. There's all types of different rules with that, with international too, but it was interesting.
Yeah, when you construct an international rate, it's a lot different than conducting a domestic truck rate. The guy says, yeah, I think I want, the carrier says, yeah, that's 1,500 miles and I want $2 a mile. That's $3,000. Then you slap a number on top of it. In the ocean freight world, everything that you do has a tariff rate, and they have to sum all of those up all the way from soup to nuts. In a traditional international move, there's probably 40 line items to get a job done. Between that, and that's problematic when you're trying to get I want to get a container. And so here's a perfect example. We bring a lot of things in from our factory to China. We want to send some empty cages back. And do you know how hard it is to get a quote to go back? I have rates all the time whenever I want them inbound, but I can't get one going outbound because that exact same process that you're talking about, where, oh, well, I've got to get this and I got to check that and I got to check that. So yeah, it's problematic because anytime you want to go one off in international, it's a pain. Yeah.
So when you're getting those quotes back, are they breaking it down for you, or is it being presented as an all-in rate?
Oh, that never is an all-in rate. They always break it down line item. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. Yes. And that's okay, because I'm from that. That was one of the things that some people wanted to do. I want to move from here to there and just give me an all-in rate. Well, the FMC really doesn't have an appreciation. Now there's some rules for NVOCCs where you can do that, but you have to have an NVOCC license. You can't just have a freight forwarding license. You can create your own little rate with a NVO or a freight forwarder. If they have an NVO license, you can't do that if they just have a freight forwarding license, because there's only 13 things that a freight forwarder does. An NVO actually sets a market and the tariff, and they can throw in the charges any which way they want. And so we could talk for 2-3 hours about that, but that'd be boring as hell.
It's definitely interesting that that whole side of the business. I mean, it was like those reps travel to visit, like you said, the ocean reps, and just how it's done is like fascinating. And someone's just dedicated just to paperwork, creating BLs. Like it's a wild industry. What are your thoughts on? Because I thought this was interesting. I had no experience in drayage either, and we had some companies that were brokers were talking about doing this new thing, drayage all-in rates. For someone that was confused by drayage to begin with, I thought that was pretty cool, because I'd have other brokers like sending me 7 different itemized things, and me not knowing anything about drayage, I was trying to figure out which one was the cheapest.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, because if you're not from our industry, you're not from the forwarding industry, you don't know what's BS and you don't know what's real. And so as a person who's used to saying $1,700 bang, to understand the components of it it's a lot of nuance. And it just depends. If you get to the large, like if you get to a veneer shipper, and I'm thinking of one specifically in Cincinnati, they know the drayman's cost better than the draymen do. And so they want to see every line item, because they want to know, I know that my base rate from here to here should be this per mile. I know this is my chassis fee. This is this. And so they want to see that, because a lot of times people want $40 a day for 2-day minimum when they're going out on one chassis. Well, those guys are doing 3,000 containers a year, and they go, you're only using a chassis for 3 hours because you're taking it right to the rail ramp. I'm not paying you $40 a day for a chassis fee, and I'm sure not paying you 2 times that for a chassis fee. So it depends on who you're negotiating with. Well, I'm not paying for your fuel. You're going 6 miles down the road. There's not going to be a fuel surcharge. You're going to give me a base rate. So those are all things that go into those decision making. And the big shippers, they know your business just as well as anybody. They know this business. That's what they get paid to do. They get paid to make sure that they're allowing people to be profitable, but not steal from them. And that's a big concern. In going back in COVID for 2 years, nobody cared because you just wanted to get it moving. Now people care again. And all you got to do is you got to go look at the freight forwarders' gross revenue per file, and then their net revenues are just terrible because people are starting to squeeze them. And that's going to continue for at least the next 2 years.
Did you see the article with Flexport? Peloton is coming after them for $12 million on freight forwarding invoices.
Well, it all stems to detention and demurrage. And look, I have my opinions on Flexport, and they're not very positive. But I will say this: when you're in an industrial specific area, and drayage is industrial specific, and the rules of the FMC and the rules of the carrier's tariffs regarding detention and demurrage, you better have subject matter experts who are dealing with the billing, because you deal with a big customer, all of a sudden you start losing 250 times 2 days at 250 is 500, then you do it times 3,000 containers. Those numbers get big really, really fast. And all of a sudden they go, I'm going to go hire a consulting company for $250,000 to get me back my $2 million. A guy named Steve Ferrara, who jumps out online talking about that all the time, how he can get your money back for that, and I read his work and I'm like, yeah, if you don't, sooner or later the numbers get big enough, they're going to go after them. And a company like Flexport, who has some software that's acceptable, they're not as schooled of freight forwarders, and they don't claim to be schooled freight forwarders. They can get in a lot of trouble for not knowing what they're doing.
It's interesting how some of that. I think you made a post. We don't want to go probably don't want to go into this topic too far with technology, but I remember reading one of your posts about a specific broker that was big on technology, and some of kind of the problems that can come from that a while back. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that there will always be people in this business, because there will always be problems, and the better you are at solving people's problems, the more successful you'll be. So you want to find people with challenges where you have subject matter competence, where you can do it. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's buddy, talked about knowing the edge of your competence, and focus on your circle of competence, and then you can squeeze outside of your competence. So I learned international freight forwarding for standard stuff, and then I have a degree in math, so I liked the concept of break bulk and oversized. So because you could put together pricing for these complex things, I could make some money because I could put together the complex process. So that was like my first bolt on, where I said, hey, I can ship things that are bigger than fit in a container, and I eliminate a lot of my competition. And so in my entire life, whenever somebody came to me with one of those, I was like, yeah, I like that stuff. The coolest thing I ever did was there's in Guyana in South America, they have a port, and there was a steamship line that induced one side of the port, and they needed to get another crane. So we moved a crane from Houston, but they didn't want it delivered at the regular port. So I talked to the steamship line, and we got to deliver it to the other port, the other part of the port, a mile downriver, so that they could take it off and assemble the crane off site. It cost $15,000 a day, but that was, but I was like, we made a very good margin on moving a crane. It was a total of 750,000 pounds, and one piece was 89,000 pounds. And we made a very good profit on it, because who the hell's going to know how to go from nowhere, Louisiana to nowhere, Guyana, and get a vessel to not go to where it's normally, is it called Zia Marine was the name of the steamship line, to go to another part of the port and have it unloaded. And so the most important thing any broker should know is, I can do anything you can afford.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Mark. I think we missed one question before we kind of wrap it up. Looks like just from a while back, Brad had a question. I don't know if Will's able to.
Oh, here's why. I've got 50 carriers that I work with in 50 lanes, and somewhere around 30,000 shipments in a year that I'm monitoring and overseeing. So that's, that's when we're talking about those kind of numbers, and we got to keep our plants up and running, I don't have time to look at that. I mean, if I've got $25,000 ocean freight, and I'm focusing on getting $25,000 down to 11,000, and I'm going to do that immediately on 300 containers a year, that's $4 million of spend I'm worried on. I'm a hell of a lot more worried on $4 million of spend and reducing it than I am about $1,500. So yeah, I gave away $6,000, maybe $9,000 in that lane, but I saved $4.2 million by bringing down the ocean freight rates from 25,000 down to 11,000 by talking to people. So as my boss would say, he goes, you got to do what's most important. That's one of the things people have to understand is that I've got priorities that I have to look at. And so I'm not going to go after that until I got my main priorities done. I mean, we've got air freight that, all of a sudden, we were giving air freight to a couple of freight forwarders and we weren't quoting it out properly. Well, I went in and quoted it. Well, on one shipment, I can save $40,000 on an air freight shipment.
Wow.
So what would you rather do? If you're my boss, do you want me to go after the big fish first? And that's why that's what you do is you find where can you have the most impact, and then you work your way down all the way through. Then you go back up and you tighten it and you keep going back through. So that's why when large companies know there's going to be mistakes in there, the question is what's the most important problem of the day? So those are the reasons that things can go 4 to 6 weeks. Is not everybody's checking on every single rate. We have some inbound rates where we have a routing guide, and that's where that was. It was on a routing guide situation. So I don't have time to quote every single inbound lane every week. I'd lose my mind. So I expect my providers, and this is one of the things where a broker might not understand. I expect brokers make between 18 and 20% in most markets. That's historically what the average is. And maybe it's 25% and maybe it's 12%. And I expect you to be somewhere in there. And if you want to be a buyer, seller, trader with me and think that you're going to ask me every single time for a quote on that, I'm not going to do business with you. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to get you set in place, and then I'm going to monitor you to keep you honest. But if it goes down $25, I don't care. But if it goes down $700, give me a little bit of my money back. You asked me to give you a raise going upwards, right? You asked me every time the market went up, you asked my company to go up. It's $300 more. Oh, it's $400 more. And you asked me for that money. Well, when the rate comes down, if you're my partner and you want to really be a trusted vendor and a trusted source for me, you're going to come down and take your fair cut. You're not going to screw me. And so therefore, it's a question of, do you want to have a relationship with a company that's been in business for 77 years, that always pays its bill, that has a great reputation in the industry for customer service? And do you want to jeopardize that because you're going to make $1,500 on 6 shipments, and then you're never going to be welcome in my facility again? And that's what a broker has to understand, because there's 27,000 freight brokers out there. Guess what? I'll find another one. So, but anyway, that's my soapbox on there.
That was a great fantastic response. Really, truly was. Yeah, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. You've been a great guest. I think that I've definitely learned a lot and really enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks again.
Yeah,
well, thanks, Rick.
We apologize if you get another 20 emails from this podcast or 20 LinkedIn messages. So we appreciate
it. I'm going to get them one way or the other. Okay. So, hey guys, thanks. It was a wonderful time to have a chat. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Man, what a great guest.
Yeah, dude, he went really in detail on a lot of stuff, tons of knowledge. And, I think it just, sometimes, I think I'm a little bit biased on this topic with technology, but it's interesting hearing it from a $700 million shipper. Yeah, top 20 brokerage tried to use their AI and automatic pricing, and we kicked them to the curb immediately. So It was interesting. That was the part was fascinated by.
Yeah, and Flexport's really big on AI. I'm big on automation, but not so much AI. But yeah, that was a fantastic guest. I definitely learned a lot. As we wrap up, another shout out to our sponsor, Sales-CRM. Great CRM option for any brokers out there, and very reasonable price, very efficient. Hit up Josh Lyles, tell him that the dog sent you.
What about Black Box?
Yeah, Black Box, I guess. Black Box Logistics, that's my company. If anybody needs anything moved, just not overseas or anything that intricate stuff that Mark was talking about a little bit too much, but over the road, we got you.
HD Ships, you're looking to become an agent, or you know anyone looking to become an agent. And thank you to Trio, who does our marketing, uploading, back end. Just kind of a little preview of Friday. We're going to have John Rogers on, who's a popular guest. He'll be streaming from some vacation spot. Will's going to be streaming from a beach in Miami. Ben's going to be streaming, hopefully not from his porch this time. And then Michael Boston, he's a game time decision due to some medical stuff. But he'll be out in New York. He's an owner-operator's, good guy. He's got some strong opinions like John. But if Mike and John can be on the same podcast together, then anything can happen between carriers and brokers. So
yeah, should be a good one. I'm really looking forward to it. It's some strong personality, so I'm sure it'll be a great discussion.
Yeah, hopefully Will knows how to control the room. So
yeah, we'll see. I don't know if anybody can, but yeah, we'll see. Be looking forward to it. Keep an eye out for some announcements. We'll have an event page, all that good stuff. This podcast will be uploaded to YouTube, Spotify. We're still working on Apple. If you missed the live broadcast, you can go listen back to it.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. We'll have a good one, guys. And thanks to all of our sponsors. And we'll see you guys on Friday.
All right.
All right.